The envelope was already open when I found it on my desk. Not torn. Not damaged. Opened carefully. Resealed. Placed back. I picked it up. Read the name on the return address. Set it down. Picked it up again. That's when I realized something was very wrong. My name is not important. What I do matters more. I work in graduate admissions at a mid-sized university. Not a famous one, but a respected one. The kind where a degree means something to the people who earn it. I've held this position for 11 years. I review applications. I sit on the committee. I have a vote, and sometimes, that vote is the deciding one. My life outside of work is quiet. Deliberately so. I live alone. I cook simple meals. I take walks in the evening. I am, by most reasonable standards, unremarkable. And for a long time, I was fine with that. My family had a different word for it. My sister, older by 4 years, called me the family failure at a Christmas dinner 9 years ago. She said it lightly, the way people say things they've been thinking for a long time, but haven't had the courage to say out loud until there's wine involved. She said I had wasted my potential. That working at a university, instead of leading one, was embarrassing. That I had settled. No one at the table corrected her. I didn't respond. I passed the bread. I finished my meal. I drove home. I didn't attend the next 3 Christmases. She never apologized. She never mentioned it again. Neither did I. We existed at a careful distance after that, holiday texts, occasional family events, nothing real. I watched her life from the outside. The large house. The 2 cars. The daughter she raised to believe that confidence was the same thing as competence. That daughter's name appeared on an application on my desk 8 months ago. I recognized it immediately. Unusual last name. My sister's married name. I stared at it for a moment. Then I set it in the general pile, and went to get coffee. That was the professional thing to do. Flag it to my supervisor, recuse myself from that specific file, let the process work as it was designed to work. That was the correct response. I planned to do exactly that. But over the next 2 days, something started to feel off. Small things at first. A colleague lingered near my desk longer than usual. My supervisor mentioned, casually, that a donor family had expressed interest in the incoming cohort this year. Nothing specific. Just interest. He smiled when he said it. I smiled back. Then I noticed that the application, the one with my sister's married name on it, had been moved to a separate tray. Not by me. I asked my assistant about it. She looked at the floor and said she wasn't sure how it got there. I asked my supervisor. He said the committee would discuss it in due course. That evening I went home and sat at my kitchen table for a long time. I've worked in this building for 11 years. I know how files move. I know what a separated tray means. I know what a donor conversation before review season means. I also knew my sister. I knew that she would not simply apply and wait. She had never simply waited for anything in her life. I thought about calling her. I thought about calling my supervisor back. I thought about a lot of things. But I had learned, a long time ago, sitting at a Christmas table, that reacting was the least useful thing I could do. So I stopped reacting. And I started watching. I started small. I began keeping a log. Nothing formal at first. Just dates and times in a plain notebook I kept in my bag. When a file moved. When a conversation happened. Who was present? What was said? The first concrete thing I found was an email. I wasn't snooping. I was covering for my assistant one afternoon while she was out sick, which meant I had access to the shared departmental inbox. A message had come in 3 weeks earlier, before the application arrived, from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line was blank. The body contained 2 sentences. One was a name. My sister's daughter's name. The second was a figure. A number with a comma in it. The email had been read. It had not been deleted. It had been moved to a subfolder labeled Scholarship Correspondence. I photographed it with my personal phone. I closed the folder. I went back to my desk. Over the following 10 days, I found 3 more emails in that folder. Each one short. Each one from the same external address. The figure in the first email appeared again in the third, this time with the word confirmed beside it. Then I found the letter. It was in the physical file, the actual paper file that lives in the cabinet beside the committee room. I accessed it on a Tuesday afternoon, during my legitimate review window. The letter was near the back of the application, behind the personal statement. It was on plain paper, not university letterhead. It referenced a named scholarship fund I had never heard of. It was signed by my supervisor. It was dated 2 weeks before the review committee was scheduled to convene. A scholarship offer. Before the review. Before the vote. Before any committee had seen the full application. I read it twice. Then I read the application itself, properly, for the first time. My niece is not unqualified. I want to be clear about that. Her grades are adequate. Her personal statement is polished, more polished than most, actually. But her research background is thin. Her recommendations are generic. In a normal year, against a normal pool, she would be a borderline candidate. Not an obvious admit. Not someone who would receive a preemptive scholarship offer from a fund that did not appear anywhere in our official materials. I kept reading. At the back of the file, I found a handwritten note. Not signed. Just 2 words and a number. The 2 words were my supervisor's initials. The number matched the figure in the emails exactly. I sat with all of this for a moment. I thought about my sister at that Christmas table. The way she had said family failure as though it were a simple observation, the way you'd note the weather. I thought about how she had raised her daughter. What she had modeled for her. What she believed people like her were simply entitled to. I thought about the other applications in that pile. The student from a rural school district, who had driven 6 hours to tour our campus, because she couldn't afford the flight. The first-generation applicant, who had rewritten his personal statement 4 times, whose recommender had called me personally to advocate for him. The dozens of people who had applied to this program, because they earned it, saved for it, built toward it. I thought about what it meant if I simply walked this file to my supervisor and said, quietly, that I needed to recuse myself. I thought about what would happen after that. The answer was simple. Nothing. Nothing would happen. The file would move forward. The offer would be honored. My supervisor would smile. My sister would call her daughter to celebrate. Life would continue. Confronting them would have ruined everything. That weekend, I did not call anyone. I did not send any emails. I did not make any sudden moves. I made copies. Everything I had photographed, I printed at home. 2 sets. One went into a folder in my home filing cabinet. The second went into a sealed envelope that I mailed to myself at a P.O. box I had held for years for exactly the kind of reason I had always hoped would never arrive. The digital copies I uploaded to an encrypted cloud folder. Then I duplicated them to a second service. Then I printed a third set and gave it to my attorney. Her name is not important. What matters is that she is methodical, patient, and has spent the last 2 decades working in higher education law. I had used her once before, years ago, for a contract dispute. She remembered me. When I laid the documents on her desk, she didn't react visibly. She read everything carefully. She asked 3 questions. Then she said, "This is enough." I asked her what enough meant. She said it meant we had evidence of improper influence on an admissions decision and a financial arrangement that, depending on how the scholarship fund was structured, could constitute a violation of the university's ethics policy at minimum, and potentially something that the state's Higher Education Oversight Board would find very interesting. She told me to stop gathering evidence immediately. What I had was sufficient. Continuing to access files would create complications. I told her I understood. I went home and I waited. In the meantime, nothing changed on the surface. I came to work every morning. I reviewed the files assigned to me. I attended the preliminary committee meeting and said nothing unusual. My supervisor chaired it. He was relaxed. He joked about the volume of applications this cycle. He mentioned the scholarship fund once, briefly, as a positive development for the program. A few colleagues nodded. No one asked questions. My niece's file was not discussed that day. It had been separated from the general review pool. I noticed. I said nothing. 3 days before the full committee was scheduled to meet, my attorney contacted the university's general counsel directly. She did not call me first. That was by design. I had told her I did not want to know the exact timing. I wanted to be present in the building. I wanted my behavior to be completely natural, because it was natural. I had done nothing wrong. I had nothing to perform. The morning of the full committee meeting, I arrived at my usual time. Made coffee. Reviewed my notes. My supervisor arrived 20 minutes later. He looked normal. He set his bag down. He said good morning. I said good morning back. At 9:45, 2 people I did not recognize walked into the department. They spoke briefly with the administrative coordinator at the front desk. She pointed toward my supervisor's office. He was called in at 9:52. The committee meeting, which was scheduled for 10 o'clock, was quietly postponed. My supervisor did not return to the main office that morning. I sat at my desk. I opened the file I had been reviewing before the interruption. I kept working. Around me, people began to notice the quiet. A few exchanged looks. Someone went to ask the coordinator what had happened. She said only that there had been a scheduling change. I did not look up. They thought it was just another day. It wasn't. What followed was not dramatic. That is the part people don't expect. When institutions handle internal violations, they move carefully and quietly. There are no raised voices in hallways. No public confrontations. Just closed doors, formal language, and the slow, grinding machinery of process. My supervisor was placed on administrative leave by noon that same day. The university's general counsel had requested an urgent review of the named scholarship fund. By the following morning, an external compliance officer had been assigned. I was contacted by the university's ethics office and asked to provide a voluntary statement. My attorney was present. I provided everything I had. Calmly, in order, with documentation. The scholarship fund, it turned out, had been established privately through a third-party vehicle. The financial arrangement was not a donation on record. It was, in the clearest terms my attorney used, a payment made in exchange for a guaranteed admissions outcome. That is not a gray area. That is not a misunderstanding, or an overzealous parent making a phone call. That is fraud. My niece's application was flagged and suspended from review pending the investigation. She was notified by the admissions office in a standard, formal letter. I had no part in drafting it. I had no contact with her during any of this. I do not know exactly when my sister found out. I know it was a Thursday, because my phone rang at 7 in the evening on a Thursday, and I recognized the number, and I let it ring. She called twice more that night. I did not answer. She sent a text the following morning. It was long. I read it once. I did not respond. There was nothing to say. There was nothing she could have said that would have changed what the documents showed. She had contacted someone with influence over an admissions process. She had facilitated a financial arrangement. Whether she understood exactly what that arrangement constituted legally is a question for her own attorney. It is not my question. The investigation concluded 6 weeks later. My supervisor resigned before a formal termination proceeding began. The third party involved in the fund transfer was referred to the State Oversight Board. The outcome of that referral is not something I have visibility into. My attorney told me the university had cooperated fully, and that my own role in bringing the matter forward had been noted positively in the final report. I was asked if I wished to apply for the interim department head position. I said I would think about it. I thought about it for 2 days and said yes. I did not tell anyone in my family. I did not post about it. I mentioned it to 2 colleagues, who had been with the department for years, and who deserved to know from me rather than an announcement. They both said congratulations. I thanked them and went back to work. My niece reapplied the following cycle, through the standard process, to a different program at a different institution. I know this because a colleague there called me as part of a routine reference check, not for a personal recommendation, but because my name had appeared in her original application materials. I answered the questions I was asked. I was factual. I did not add anything beyond what was asked. My sister has not contacted me since the text. I think about the Christmas dinner sometimes. Not with anger. More with something like clarity. She had always believed that the right word in the right room was worth more than the actual work. She had taught her daughter the same thing. And for a long time, in a lot of rooms, she had probably been right. She had just miscalculated which room she was walking into. I came into work the morning after the investigation closed, made coffee, and sat down at my desk. The pile in front of me was the same pile it always was. Applications from people who had worked for years toward a single opportunity. People who had no one making calls on their behalf. I opened the first file. I read carefully. That night, everything was quiet.